Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of the Inner Shift podcast. Today, we are joined by Edin, also known as Evidence Nutrition.
And he's just rocking a pack of nerds, and he's got balloons now.
Yeah, I got called a nerd earlier today, and I felt the need to purchase nerds and consume them. So, hey, that's me. I'm Evidence Nutrition. I'm also called Diabeto on the internet. So you can use them at your disposal, whatever you want.
That works too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know where we're going from here. This needs to be cut.
Let me start us off the right way. All right.
How dare you? That is cancer in a can.
For those of you listening, that is a Pepsi Zero.
No, they knew. They could identify it based on the sound.
They knew.
The sound was clear enough. You just need good audio. I can tell you right now, their ears perk up like dogs. They're like, oh my God, was that a Pepsi Zero Lime? And they got really excited.
To carry this conversation along, we were talking about hate comments before this.
Yeah.
So let's continue that conversation.
Yeah, I think we were talking about there's two camps of people clearly, and I think the three of us fall into one camp, and that's people that enjoy receiving hate comments. Not to say that we're, I shouldn't say enjoy, but find value in hate comments while they are demoralizing in every way. And none of us like public humiliation, I don't think, or at least I'll speak for myself. I don't like public humiliation, but that's not a kink of mine.
Shame.
Yeah, not kink shaming. I'm just saying it's not a kink of mine personally, but yeah, I do see the opportunity. I'm very opportunistic, and I think the other two guys share the same sentiment. So I actually really like when people leave me creative hate comments, because one, it's a good laugh, you know what I mean? It's especially when it's something you've never heard before, and it makes you think. Like, it's an opportunity. We were chatting about this earlier, where, for example, in my case, I make evidence-based nutrition content. So what is usually fairly objective information that I'm presenting can sometimes be controversial, and that's very understandable, because food is sensitive. Food is actually so unique in the sense that it's something that every single person, and I don't know if there's any other industry with the exception of like freedom of thought, where you're doing it every single day, and you do it for yourself. And any other thing in life where if you do something and you survive another day with it, you condition yourself to believing that you're doing it well. Nutrition is interesting, where you get to a point where you're like, oh, okay, well, I'm, X years old. I'm 29 years old. I've gotten to 29, or I've gotten to 60. I must be doing something right. So it's one of those things that doesn't really tell you how well you're doing as you're doing it. And so everyone thinks they're an expert on their own domain in nutrition, even if someone's more educated than them. And what's hilarious about that, I'll go on a side tangent, is that the people that are the most educated are oftentimes the least controversial, and the people that are the quietest, because they know how much they don't know. So the people that don't know a lot, it's the idea of a Dunning-Kruger effect. They tend to go in it, they learn a little bit, and they get really confident in that little thing that they've learned. Like, there's a 16-year-old kid that I actually freaked out in the kitchen. I think his content is both amazing and terrible all at once. He's a 16-year-old Canadian kid that showed up on my For You page 7 out of 9 posts. So I was scrolling through the algorithm, and 7 out of the 9 scrolls, I couldn't believe it. I had my girlfriend in the room with me, and she was like, all right, calm down. I was like, this is crazy. How is one person showing up that much? And so all he does is, and all he does is like, he posts, I don't remember his name. And this isn't to bash him at all, because he's 16. How much could he know at 16? He surely, like, truthfully, he knows more than me, right, at that age. And so he was talking about like, oh, I'm eating healthy, and it's like this mixture of the Giga Chad sound combined with like, I'm eating on a cutting board and I'm eating berries and whatever, right? So you kind of get the idea of the content, but it really made me think that, like, he's a Dunning-Kruger, right? Like, he got a little attention for posting what he thinks to be healthy food. Like he thinks this makes him feel good, and that's great. And so he's at 16 years old. He doesn't know the world outside of what he lives, right? Like he lives with his parents, they pay the bills. Just wait till he gets hit with a rent bill in Toronto, because that's where he lives. So that'll be mind numbing for him for sure. I used to live there, and that was before this crazy hike. But anyways, I digress. But he really made me think, though, that there's about that idea of the Dunning-Kruger effect, where somebody can talk with the most confidence on something, doesn't mean that they know something. And a perfect example of this is that kid. He's 16, and he's showing people how to eat healthy. I'm sorry, those air quotes for anybody that's listening on without video, but he's showing people to eat healthy. But like, is he showing people how to eat healthy, or is he showing people that he exhibits orthorexic eating behaviors, where he's eating the same thing every single day on a cutting board because he feels that the internet has told him that that's what he needs to do because they back that decision? And then, combine that with the fact that nutrition is personalized. That's what he likes. And he it could potentially be orthorexic eating behaviors, but it could also just be what he likes eating. And if you like eating steak, berries, avocado every single day, sick, right? Like, that's awesome. I love that for you. And if you can afford that, fantastic. He throws in a sweet potato here and there, so he's getting some carbs in. Like, he's objectively, I would say, eating healthy. I would never say that he's not. But, putting a moral value on it, I am better than you, that's where the orthorexia comes in. I am better than you, I'm an elitist, this and that. So, I was kind of going on a side tangent there, but I think it's really interesting in nutrition that you can't talk about it because someone feels differently. Someone's experience is different from yours. So I struggle on the internet, and I've received feedback recently, as recent as yesterday. I'm not going to call the person out, but they seem to think that I push way too high of a protein diet on people. And to that, I've repeatedly said, like, there's a lot of nuance in protein. And I'm working on a post to hopefully clear the air on this with Alan Aragon, who, if you don't know, is a leading expert in nutritional research in general. So, so I digress again. It's just, I think it's really interesting that nutrition, while objective, it's science, there is a little bit of an art to it. And you have to really understand, and this is good for, trainers to understand, and even dietitians alike. I get the pleasure of meeting with dietitians all the time. There is an art to communicating nutrition to each individual because nutrition is so individualized. For example, that kid loves eating what he loves eating. So let's say it's the steak and whatever that I described. But Jesse loves eating, I believe he posted a story the other day. He loves eating pizza, pastas, those kind of things. I don't remember exactly what he said. In ice cream, I believe you said that, in burgers. And Jesse has objectively done can I swear on this podcast?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. A crazy fucking thing where he's lost more body weight than I have on me currently. And if you're going to sit here and say, well, he didn't do it the right way because he ate pizza, pasta, et cetera, all of these things. Well, that's crazy, right? Like, but would he have lost weight quicker doing it, quote unquote, the other way that kid is suggesting? Yeah. I mean, if he had $1 million, maybe. And if he really enjoyed those things, but if he doesn't, no, he would not, because adherence is the most important thing behind diet and exercise, and diet and fitness. Adherence is the most important thing. You can have the craziest shreds diet ever, but if you can't maintain it for longer than a week, then
what are you doing?
It sucks. Yeah, what are you doing? Exactly. So I actually, I guess to go back to my original point, I think it's funny where the hate comments come from when, I will display maybe an example. In my case, I'll usually use examples. And usually they will be, I will intentionally choose these examples because they might be a little bit on the edge, but they're objective, or, they're my way of approaching a certain situation that someone has an issue with. So pre-workout meals. I will never use the terminology, and I don't think anyone in the evidence-based space will use absolutes. So I'll never say this is the best way or the only way you can do this. And you can feel free to call me on that. If anybody ever finds me saying something like that, unless it's like sarcastically, I will give you $100. I will e-transfer you $100 if you've ever found a video clip of me saying that. Again, in context. So yeah, it'll never happen because it's so individualized. And normally evidence-based folks have some experience, even if they're personal trainers. I know a lot of PTs, but they have the experience of talking to people, and they see, Becky, who works out 3 times a week and is generally like a weekend warrior, but mixes in one day throughout the week. And she's just struggling off and on with like an extreme diet where she's salads every day. And then Friday, Saturday, Sunday comes and she fucking goes bananas because she hates salads, and she's just eating to her heart's content on the weekends. So yeah, I think it's really funny when the comments will be like, "Oh my God, fuck you! You don't know what you're talking about because I lost X amount of weight doing carnivore diet." I'm like, sick, Rick.
That's great for you. Yeah,
love that for you. And usually it's like, yeah, of course, if that worked for you, I love that for you.
I hope that you maintain it.
Yeah, well, if that's the end of their comment, it usually isn't. But if the end of their comment is like, "Fuck you, I did this," well, then I'll say, "Well, love that for you." I will literally just end it there. I'll just say, "Love that for you. Keep it up." And I don't. If the things that I talk against, which carnivore is one of them, quite frequently, or any extreme diet, if the things that I talk against don't work for you, fantastic. That's okay. That's part of this individualized thing I was talking about. Nutrition does exist as a science. It does have ranges.
I think one of the most crazy things about nutrition is the fact that people see it as black and white. Like so many people, basically everybody sees it as black and white, and you can't.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause and I think having one, it's so funny. I'll speak to my personal or my professional experience. I think every single one of my hundreds of clients that I've ever worked one-on-one with, which I would say I don't work with that many, at a time, but over the last, 5 years or so, every single one of them is like, first day, they ask a bunch of questions like, what if I do this? Well, what if I do this? And what if I do this? And I go, see, that's why these harsh rules are very tough. It's like, what if I'm going to dinner with my grandma? She loves to force feed me food and my goal is fat loss. What do I do then? What do I do then? Well, thank you for highlighting the behavioral side of nutrition. Or like, what about my mom always cooks things and makes me eat at home and blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, fantastic. This is something that we can talk about because your goals don't need to be so extreme that your mom can't help support you in reaching them. And these are examples where I right away say, hey, see those questions that you asked? That's called nuance. So I think, and there's lots of creators that have gone on the internet and or on socials in the last few years since TikTok came around that have kind of highlighted, using 2 different analogies, the forest for the trees, like don't miss the forest for the trees, and don't lose all the big rocks trying to pick up the little pebble. And then they'll use that little cup analogy, right, where they'll fill up a cup with small pebbles and the big rocks, right? It's like you kind of need your fundamentals to fill the cup, and then you can fit all of the little details in along with it, instead of once you've filled all the details in and then try to fit in big rocks. You can't fit all the rocks in. But if you fit in all of the fundamentals first with the big rocks and then fill in the empty gaps with your knowledge on supplements, your knowledge on whatever, your cold plunges and all of that stuff, then, and like, again, then you can have a much better rounded, well, first of all, health and also like understanding of nutrition.
I think nuance is required after somebody has sustained a certain level of experience, and once they've managed to develop a certain level of like mental fortitude, but once they've also been doing something long enough to actually need to have those small rocks, because like you mentioned too, like the foundational stuff is going to be the big rocks, like just focusing on their activity levels, what they're eating, making better food choices, being more conscientious, their water intake, like the big rocks first, before worrying about the little tiny things that, again, like it's going to take tons of them to actually make any kind of exponential difference, right?
Yeah, and I completely agree on that. And it could be as simple. I think it's really important to highlight in this specific example, since we are all, I will say, experts in the space of fitness and nutrition. I think it's really important to highlight those big rocks are simple shit. It is literally working out regularly. Like, fuck a program, just working out regularly, eating, like, and knowing what you're eating. Again, fuck a diet plan. Knowing what you're eating is like that's a big rock, right? And then like,
and how much, because so many people don't even weigh their food. They
that's
know
what
they're
that's
eating,
kind of,
but like,
know what and how much of, like, for example, just tracking whatever it is that you're eating. That's one method. You guys don't have to lose your shit on me. You can do it whatever way you want. If you don't want to track your macros, that's fine. But like, that's a great way of, like, even just that. So Jesse, I'm going to flip it to you. Right when you started tracking your food, you didn't even probably hop on a diet right away, but how much success did you see, especially, at your weight at the time? How much success did you see literally just starting to track your food?
So I'm not the best example, because when I started, I was just eating the exact same 3 foods every day. So like,
okay.
But I mean, tracking in general for me has been completely fundamental, in the sense that until you put in that time tracking, until you weigh out your food, and like, I don't track anymore because I know I have a good enough understanding. But even though I don't track, I still weigh my food, because I need to know how much of a serving I'm having. And even though I can eyeball 50 grams of popcorn like that, most foods I can't. And that's, ultimately,
and just not, sorry to interrupt, but and there's literature on this to back what I'm about to say. This is a scientific fact. All experts, even in the field of nutrition, none of them are good at accurately and consistently tracking food serving sizes. Just want to make that abundantly clear. It's not just Jesse, oh, he doesn't know shit, and that's why he needs to measure his stuff, and I'm better than Jesse. No. I don't care who you think you are. You're not getting 50 grams of rice 10 out of 10 times.
Mm-hmm. I think
you can't even get even within
often enough for certain things that you eat often enough. I think you get to a point where you can eyeball it pretty close, but
not consistently, and not with, like, popcorn is one thing, but when it's something like peanut butter, you can, like, this be off within 20, 30 calories. So like,
protein, right?
Yeah, exactly. Same. So yes, I agree with you. You can, I'm not saying you can't get away with it like popcorn. I'm sure you can get within 10% every time. But again, popcorn's like a pretty high margin thing, or rather, I guess, you got a high room for margin.
I had this talk recently with somebody, and I mentioned the fact that specific goals require specific actions, right? So I do think that within that, like, if somebody has a goal of losing weight or a goal of gaining weight, then they have to be willing to track
even for a short period of time.
And just so that way they know, like, what they're taking in. If somebody just has goals of maybe just maintaining their current body weight for just specific, just like whatever, let's just say generic health reasons, then maybe they don't need to actually be tracking. But I do think that if somebody has specific goals, whether it be weight loss, weight gain, body composition related, or sport performance related either, I think that would probably require them to be tracking their food. And because that's going to be a specific action that's going to be getting, towards their specific goal.
Yeah, can I sprinkle in a little nuance? Because I agree wholeheartedly. Because that is so the only, kind of asterisk, or the only star I would put on that is people that are struggling with disordered eating. And most of those people don't know that they are. So in those cases, though, they should definitely talk to a dietitian who is specialized in eating disorders and disordered eating patterns. Yeah. And in either way, though, that is still true. Like, because, let's use the example of weight loss. Someone whose goal has been weight loss and they've been struggling for a long time, they go to see Bryce or they go to see Jesse, like, hey, I need some tips. without the context of they have an eating disorder, you give them a meal plan, they stick to it, it all works out great. Everybody's happy. But the person with an eating disorder,
don't give them a meal plan.
You can't. And they need to understand that their goal has to be different. They need to put aside weight loss as a goal, perhaps just for the moment, and really hyperfixate on, can I establish healthy boundaries and goals with working out and, eating foods and eating these things. Weight loss will probably still happen as a byproduct of that, and they'll still hit their goal, but they need to be, and it goes back to what you're saying. They just need to have more specific goals for what it is that they're doing. It doesn't mean that they will never lose weight and they're just going to be fat forever. No, that's not the case. It's just, again, that nuance, as you mentioned, really, and you just need specific goals that are attainable for you, which again goes back to the personalization of health, nutrition, and fitness.
I do think there has to be a bit of like a mental requirement or like a mental evaluation before someone gets into tracking. So that kind of works in conjunction with what you were saying there too. Just because, like you said, and I'd say it's the same thing with like a meal plan as well too, right? Like somebody has to make sure that they're in a good frame of mind and they do have to be in a good place. So again, you can ask some questions that you could have for yourself, just to ask them in general to get an idea of where they're at. But again, it's good for them to get some alternative perspective and from just like a different professional too, just to see where they're currently at. Because again, like you said, it's a bit of a slippery slope when it comes to disordered eating or any kind of body image related issues too. And if they have those issues prior going into it, it probably wouldn't make for a good experience in general.
Yeah, and that's where, registered dietitians who are kind of trained in this will ask questions like as simple as, hey, what does the weight scale number mean to you? Right away, if somebody's giving you some emotionally tied response with their entire value as a human being is tied to what that number says, well then that's, red flag number one. That's not that's not an, oh my God, stop right now. Because for me, when my weight scale starts climbing up, I still get, I'm going to fall out of relevancy. I don't have a six pack. Fuck. No one's going to watch me. No one's going to give a fuck. Not even my mom. And so obviously that's not the only barrier of entry, but there's there'd be a question like that, or a question like, do you work out just for the sake of burning calories? Mm-hmm. That could be a very common one as well. And somebody would be like, yeah, I just want to lose weight, dude. That's the only reason why I'm working out. I don't give a fuck about working out otherwise. So then it's like, you got to, and I'm sure, Bryce, you've probably got a lot of experience with this. It's like you're teaching people, especially when it goes to resistance training. It's like, well, hey, this is some of the other benefits of resistance training. Does that interest you? And then, you kind of see where their mental state is at that way. It is, those dietitians, there's a reason why there's not a dietitian for everything, and why there's specialties, even within dietetics. It's a very challenging thing, whether it's sport dietetics, and my education is more in line with sport and less in line sport and exercise, and less in line with, disordered eating patterns and such. But, I have a little bit of a background on it. I'm very keen on understanding people, but I will never in my life, if somebody needs help for a disordered, an eating disorder, if I feel overwhelmed and underqualified to help them in any capacity, or they need consistent help, they cannot be just my rough guidelines don't really work, they need a lot more attention, I'm giving them off to, Yates Nutrition or someone like that who, shout out to her, by the way. She makes great content on Instagram. She's also a dietitian. For if you're listening to this right now, she's a great registered dietitian, for anybody that's looking for disordered eating help. But I digress, right? These are people who literally do this day in and day out, and it's like their second nature. Just like a doctor, right? I'm not going to go to a pediatrician for help on my something that an optometrist or an ophthalmologist would do. You know what I mean? They're not going to be able to help with my eyesight and my corrective lenses or whatever it is that I need. So, for the same reason they use the classic analogy, you're not going to go to your plumber to be your dentist. They do different jobs and they train for different things.
Yeah, 100%.
I have some nuance I want to add to this. So
do it.
As the only person here that's lived at 500 pounds or even significantly overweight, obviously
for now, I'm
Um,
kidding.
I've I've I have that perspective of A, how important tracking was, but B, how much it can actually have detriment, which is why
Yes.
I understand some people not wanting to do it. So
Yeah.
for me, having tracked for so long and why I don't track anymore for that matter is because to me, it actually led almost to more towards disordered eating. I went from living with extremely loud food noise and
Yeah.
always having that voice in my head of telling me I need to eat, telling me, I need McDonald's or cheesecake or whatever the hell, all the bad stuff that gave me that dopamine rush. And I
Yeah.
replaced that food noise with food noise that's going, can I be eating this right now? Can I afford these 700 calories for this food? Can I spend my calories this way? Can I have popcorn at the movie theater? Can I have, this, can I have 2 chips? And I'm in the kitchen. Can I eat those chips?
And
So
then
it's like,
that one person asks you, "Hey, wait, I thought you were on a diet. Are you sure you
exactly.
can eat that?"
Yeah, so it's in a way, the people that struggle with tracking or don't want to track, I respect it in a way because as somebody that has gone through it, it absolutely led to disordered eating for me, and not
Yeah.
in a bad way. It's led me to success, and that disordered eating in a way has made me healthier, and has
Yeah.
made
Going
me,
through that struggle.
yeah. But
Yeah.
I at the same time, there's definitely points in time where I wish that I didn't have that because it's I that is forever my life now. I'm never going to be able to look at a bag of chips and not be like, I can't eat this.
Yeah.
And I that will forever be in my head. And
Yeah.
that's a difficult thing to get past. And it kind of hurts your relationship with food, which I think I do have a relatively good relationship with food now,
Yeah.
but there was a good period of time, and a lot of self-reflection that went into fixing that because of that disordered eating that tracking gave me. So
Right.
there are times I think that it is appropriate where somebody doesn't necessarily need to track and can still be successful. It's just, you have to be a little bit more methodical and calculated about what you're eating, but you can
Yeah.
still essentially be in a deficit without any sort of tracking.
I
Yeah.
think this is kind of where the nuance lies, right? I'll quickly take
Yeah.
this one really quick. And I think like if somebody tends to have an emotional relationship with food, I think that's where a lot of these issues can stem from. So if somebody again has some sort of sentimental attachment towards it, that's where these disordered eating related issues can come from. But I think also within that too, like I don't think everybody should start tracking their food right when they start working out,
Yeah.
because I think that a good thing to start off with is just teaching them good habits. Like maybe you're giving them an idea of like, hey, let's get you to try to have more protein in the day, because chances are they're way under eating protein. So like, what can we do to increase your protein intake? What can we do to create more awareness around what you're actually eating in the day itself too, and focus on those things first, so they can like see what eating better foods can actually do for them before going straight to like what Jesse mentioned. Okay, well I need to track every morsel and every ounce of food that I'm eating, because
Yeah.
that can turn into a huge control issue, right? Especially if you're in a spot where you have a really bad relationship with food. If you're on the opposite end and you're completely in control of it, it almost gets to the point where it becomes toxic, and you give yourself no leeway. And then there's a lot of shame and guilt that's around it too,
Yeah.
because you have such an emotional attachment to it. Whereas if you see things a little bit more subjectively, and you see food as something that is going to give you performance, right? It's going to help you work towards your goals, get you towards performing better, feeling
Yeah.
better, living the life you want to live, then people aren't as attached to it. Then I find like the issues aren't as relevant. But if there is that emotional tie, it can be an issue.
Yeah. A lot of that stems from like people are, I mean, pretty simple. Two things I want to add to that is the first thing is people feel like when they start a diet, and I don't want to take a big asterisk, take this with a grain of salt. Obviously, not every person, but when you start a diet, when your mindset is that of I'm losing something, it's hard to feel good doing the thing, aka the diet, because you feel like you just lost an immense amount of value that, as you said, you were emotionally tied to maybe, or the dopamine hits that Jesse was talking about. Food is interesting because, you know, I know a lot of girls in this household that like shopping. You can't really do that every day, but you can sure as shit visit Don's on the way home every single day. Most people can, right? Obviously, like, you know,
unless you're rich.
yeah. And if you're rich, you can have more expensive dopamine hits. But like that's kind of what I mean, right? Is like, that's where nutrition is quite challenging. And like, you know, we always go back to the ancestral stuff, and you know, there's a lot of nuance and romanticization, or romanticizing, I should say, of you know, what our ancestors did. And then I like try to remind people, like, okay, like, leaving aside the fact that people died at the age of like 36, depending on what age you bring up in this ancestral debate.
Totally.
If we look at the industrial revolution type era of people, and that was like 100 years ago, not even. What were the jobs? Like, just what were the jobs? Tech didn't fucking exist. So most people were not even working from home. That was not a thing. The only work from home was being a mother. That was the only work from home. And that was because food was, you know, you can go to the grocery store once or twice, and there wasn't obviously as many different Oreos and all of that kind of stuff. Sure, granted. So temptation has now gone up. The access has now gone up, but the access to healthy food has gone up, but not quite at the same pace as ultra processed food has gone up in terms of access. Because we still haven't really figured out how to get, you know, to remote parts of Canada, for example. Like, I think all three of us are Canadian. Yeah. So, there are many parts of Canada that you physically cannot get to without a plane, or a boat. And there are many parts of the US that don't have a lot of access to fruits and vegetables as well, because maybe you don't need a boat to get there, but you need refrigerated trucks, and that's too expensive. And that area where people live is kind of rural and maybe poor, lower income. And so because of that, and people just don't buy into it, they don't have the education where that truck is going. So the grocery store ends up buying a lot of groceries that are fruits, veggies, etc., and nobody's buying them. So they just stop purchasing them, stop making them available, because they don't want to continue to lose money on fruits and vegetables, right? And that's just simple economics. But because of that simple economics, now we're looking at, you know, you don't have access to healthy food, and you want to romanticize this ancestral time of your life, but instead you're getting bombarded with dopamine in all ways. Like, to get a dopamine hit, imagine how hard you had to work to earn a dopamine hit back, like, call it in the 1950s, even 1960s, how hard you had to work, man, even just to get some Coke, you know what I mean? Like, this type of Coke, not the other kind. Although
that's
too.
what you meant.
That's also not.
No, that like, right. Think about how difficult it was to get a bottle of Coke. Okay.
Side note, but still, continue.
Yes. But like, think about how hard it was even to get that at the time. Whereas now I can go grab 12 downstairs right now. Granted, these are 0 calorie, but you get the point. I could do the same with full calorie one. And most people do, because now they have that emotional connection with, I can't drink 0 or diet. I don't want to be a bitch, or it tastes different. Like, yeah, it tastes different, but you choose your poison. But anyways, I'll digress from that.
Better. As well. I'm going to be that guy. It tastes better.
That's fine. But like I said, pick your poison, right? Like, at a very young age, we will get into this argument right now. At a very young age, I started drinking these. And by very young, I mean fucking like 16. I actually had never had a diet product of any kind until I think 16 or 17. And that was because I have type 1 diabetes. And my parents were like very they were very appeal to nature fallacy type folks. Everything natural is better. Everything homemade is better. While I think a lot of that stemmed from not having the resources financially. Mom and dad, if you do end up listening to this, I love you. You did a great job, but I'm just saying, I don't think they were trying to spill their money away, because they wanted it for other things, for us to be able to have a good life. They came to this country for us to have a better life. Anyways, now that I've given that disclaimer, we just never had that stuff. So when I had it the first time, I was like, just the same sentiment. I was like, oh God, this is fucking terrible. And then I actually got exposed to a community. I must have been about 17, because then I got exposed to a community of other diabetics, and they're like, fuck, I only drink Diet Coke. I only drink. And at the time, we didn't have that many, like Diet Pepsi wasn't or Diet Dr. Pepper wasn't a thing. Like there wasn't that many diet options. But when there was one, you would see that one diabetic kid that was like, fuck yeah, I can drink this without taking an injection. And by the way, for everybody that makes trend jokes, taking injections sucks. Okay. I do them 5 to 8 times a day, every day. The thumbs up, fire timing. That is unreal timing. Yeah, it absolutely blows. So when I kind of realized I could leverage, yeah, you lose a little bit on the taste profile, but I can now leverage this drink to have a fun drink and not have to take an injection. That was like a gold mine. So it became a tool, right? Now this Diet Pepsi, while it was not maybe the same level of dopamine, it still scratched the itch. And I think Jesse will attest to that. It still kind of scratches the itch. But in your case, without the downfall of, fuck, now I have less to eat. And in my case,
that's
still kind of
100% the value, really.
Yeah. At my age at the time, I didn't care about that, but because I was playing a lot of tennis and whatnot. But now I definitely, that's also a side, benefit. I can eat more. I have an insanely high appetite. So that's, that's where, again, nuance lies, and you have to, this is why, like, I hate when people make those videos about like judging people's recycling bins or judging people's carts while they're shopping. Is like, dude, you don't know what people are going through, what they can afford, or why they're buying the things that they're buying. Like,
you know what's really funny to me is I made a video the other day, and I got a comment about the cereal that's sitting on top of my counter. It's like, do you not even understand that's not even, it's not my cereal, but they're mad at me because it's in the video. Like, you don't know what's in that person. You don't know why that's in that person's cart. Maybe they're buying it for a food bank. Like,
yeah, to donate it because it's a non-perishable food item. Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
which is more than possible.
It's so wild to me when people make comments like that.
Dude, I do love that we got back to the original point of where we started. This is fantastic. It only took us 30 minutes, but we're here. For those of you that stuck through with us, thank you so much. Because yeah, hate comments are interesting. I mean, I think if you can leave a hate comment, it's so cliche to say, but I think people that leave hate comments are just, upset that it's working for you. Like, fuck you. I'm suffering. Fuck you, Jesse. You're trying to tell me you got an extreme amount of success eating pizza, the Pop-Tarts in the case of those like legendary thingies, and like chips and all of this, and you're still seeing success. Fuck you. I'm not. Right. And I think that kind of is where most of the comments go from. Or like, you've also got those guys that, and there's a large pocket of them that are, well, let me put it this way, that have a fish in their Tinder profile picture. That's all I'm going to say. And those type of fellas, they'll always comment just because they got no attention at home. They got, nothing good going for them in their life. They were the kids that peaked in high school, and then after high school, now they're looking for their value in life, which, I hope they find their value, but leaving hate comments on the internet,
you're not wrong,
never has added value.
Can I just interject that those legendary Pop-Tarts are amazing? I
disagree, but like, taste is subjective.
Oh man,
God, don't go there. We've gone through this discussion.
We usually agree, but the fact that you don't like those is that's a little
here. Okay. You know what? I think it's not fair for me to say I don't like. I really think it's like you and how you feel about like diet. Like, it would diet soda kind of thing. It definitely would scratch the itch. But bear in mind that I also don't have the itch for Pop-Tarts. So that's got to be like... Okay, but
that's the thing. Okay, first of all, people call them Pop-Tarts. They're not Pop-Tarts. They're just pastries. That's the problem. Yeah. You can't go into it looking at it as a Pop-Tart because it's not.
I'll take that. If you go into it just like hoping for a little sweet treat, it's great.
Yeah.
If you go into it hoping for a Pop-Tart, you're going to have a bad time.
You are, because the texture is nothing like it. It's
No,
more like a
nothing like
toaster
it.
strudel than a Pop-Tart.
I'll take that, actually. The ones that you put the little white jizz-like cream over top, yeah, they're great.
Yeah, I love some
they're
cream
great.
in my mouth.
If you go into it with that, you'll be less disappointed than if you go into it with the fact that it's a Pop-Tart.
Yeah, because Pop-Tarts are hard. They're soft. It's a pastry, not a Pop-Tart.
Yeah.
This is a fat dude. I'm an expert on this shit, all right?
Dude, your word is worth more than mine in this case.
I'm an expert on soft and hard things and white stuff on it, so
we got the whole trifecta over here. Triple threat. But yeah, my curiosity, I kind of have a question for you guys, if you don't mind.
Fire.
Hit me.
What is, this is inspired by Jesse's Q&A the other day. Okay. What is something that, and first question is for Jesse.
Okay.
What is something that, you said your story, and I'll tell you, where my thought process came from. It was, you made a story responding to a comment that was like, what if you are overweight and deal with, I think the comment was like, what if you're overweight and deal with depression? Something along those lines. Maybe you'll remember the question you answered. And you said, first of all, if you're weighing 500 pounds, like your opener was, first of all, if you weigh 500 pounds, you've definitely dealt with some sort of like depression at some point. So I guess the question that came from there was, well, what's something that was a debilitating thought for you? And Bryce, by all means, if you have any experience with this, with other people or with yourself that I don't know of, what's something that is debilitating that people don't know about? Nothing to do with the weight. Perhaps whether it could be weight related, but more so to do with the size that you were at that time that people would like never consider. And what were some things that you feel like you, whether from social stigma or whatever, were not allowed to do, aside from like, obviously, I was not allowed to, people would say, are you allowed to eat that? Like, aside from that, what did you feel like you were never allowed to do at that size? 500 plus, I'll call it, because I don't know the exact weight. But what was something that you felt like was difficult dealing with, or that you felt like you could not do at that size, not necessarily that weight, if that makes sense?
So things that I couldn't do at that size is honestly just about everything. Like that list is a mile long because there was nothing I could do. I lived a life of being at home essentially 24/7, getting shit delivered to me because I could barely go grocery shopping. I could barely stand and walk for 5 minutes, which is crazy to think about with where I'm at now. But yeah,
you're playing hockey now.
Yeah, so like the concept of what couldn't I do, that list is a mile
long. Or what did you
long.
feel like you couldn't do that really like kind of affected that mental state is kind of what I wanted to get at.
Sure. So I mean, I felt like I felt like I couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
The question, the previous question you had as far as like what's debilitating, the social anxiety. So like there's so much social anxiety that people, even people that are like 250 plus are going to experience, and it's literally everything you're doing, you constantly feel like everybody's looking at you. Even when you're with people you love that care about you, you're constantly feeling judged no matter what. And then like on top of that, there's like so many like small things that you wouldn't really consider. Like I had a conversation with somebody earlier today, and they mentioned, so I was doing a coaching consult, and they said that one of their struggles is they want to be able to get up flights of stairs without feeling like they're out of breath. And I made a joke, like, I remember every time I went up a flight of stairs with anybody around me, I would be going up the flight, I would get to the top, I would be so out of breath, but I would be playing it off like I'm not. Like I would do my best to be like, I'm fine, right? But
yeah, low key, I still do that, by the way. Yeah.
Because like you don't want people to know how much you're struggling. And
yeah,
like
absolutely.
That's a reality of being that size, is your entire time is just trying to let the outside world not know how much you're struggling. And anybody that's that size, not even that size, anybody that's 300 plus, they're struggling and they're struggling probably 90% of their day. And when people say things like it's a lot harder to be overweight than it is to lose the weight, that is extremely true, because it is demoralizing in just about every possible way to be that size. And people they give excuses to themselves because of that dopamine rush we talked about earlier, because it's so easy for them to just get lost in food, for them to comfort themselves with food, to use it as a coping mechanism, and to use it for those dopamine hits that are going to kind of just let you forget about those struggles that you're dealing with. And when it's your only way of forgetting about those struggles, it's such a hard cycle to break. It's demoralizing, and that's why I said that being at that size, you don't get to that size without depression, because those come hand in hand. As soon as I would say anybody 300 plus has probably battled depression, because you can't get there and not be depressed. It's not possible. If somebody told me that they're that size and not depressed, I would just straight up tell them they're in denial, because they are.
Yeah. And there's going to be a follow-up for Bryce here, but I really, obviously, thanks for answering that. That was kind of like a personal question that I was curious about. But, one thing that I think is underappreciated when somebody does make that big of a transformation is not only like it's the compound effect of that feeling. You kind of outlined it and said, like, I felt like I couldn't do anything. And somebody might run past that, or like just skim through that in their head when that like leaves your mouth and they're listening to you say that. They might just skim through and be like, yeah, okay, whatever. But like the compound effect, and what I really wanted to highlight here is being 500 pounds is heavy. Yeah, tough for the joints. Yeah, that's the physical weight of it. And you also mentioned that people 250 plus, I've been 250. And yeah, the moment I do anything, I'm getting judged. But the problem is with me is my 250 is usually the judgment. Like, I feel the judgment, but usually my judgment comes with, they know that I'm diabetic. They know that I'm heavy. They know that I work in fitness and nutrition and have an education in nutrition. So they'll kind of combine those four and guilt trip me with comments, because they feel inferior beside me for whatever reason. Very different reason for the comments, debilitating nonetheless, but not the same. And the other thing, the big difference is that my shit doesn't come unprompted. I very rarely would have a small child come up to me and say, small children have no fucking filter. And they are like, usually the biggest like reality check is like, and they've, very rarely, but it did happen where somebody would come up, you're huge. Like, whoa, what is that leg thing? Like what? And they would like, poke you or whatever. But like I always, and it was also combined with a thought that I had earlier, is that when I had a kid, kind of say like, you're like talking about me and my size. And I just thought about like, man, imagine if they said that to me, who I'm confident with who I am. I'm confident with my size. I'm 230-ish or 225, 230-ish now. I obviously have a very different body composition than the average person that's about 250. And I'm around 6 foot. So it's not really that big of a deal. Imagine them saying that same innocent sentence to someone that's 500 pounds. And they would say that to them because you can see it the moment they walk in the room. You cannot hide 500 pounds like I hide 230. No one, when I tell people I'm 230, they're like, no fucking way. They're like, step on a fucking scale. There's no way. People are like, you're 180. They see, a picture off my Instagram. They go 180, 190 tops. And I go, dude, I'm about to step on the scale and you're about to embarrass me. But 500 pounds, you cannot hide. You can't. And my curiosity was like, my thoughts in my head were like, how, like, I really am trying to empathize with folks that are that size, because, I can hide my diabetes. I can make sure you never fucking see it. And for 2 years on social media, maybe even 3, no one knew I had it until I started wearing these, they call them, the people in the comments call them the trend trackers. Until I started wearing a continuous glucose monitor, nobody knew that I even remotely had diabetes, right? Like, or had anything quote unquote wrong with me. Mm-hmm. You can't hide 500 pounds. You can't just step behind like a tree branch and hide it, and so why I say that is I think it's so easy to underestimate how much the impact of those small little things, like struggling to tie your shoes, or struggling up the flight of stairs, or struggling to go to the bathroom, and all of these little things that I would easily take for granted because I don't have an issue doing those things. I think it's really important people like understand, like, hey, you pointing it out doesn't help anyone, because that's what you're feeling, right? Like that. I asked you that question and I'm thankful you answered, because you just highlighted how, like, you couldn't even get past the initial question was like, what specific thing, bro? Everything sucked, right? So that's what it feels like to be in the head of someone that's 500 pounds. But as you said, and I'll hopefully I'll never know, but and not to say that there's anything wrong about the people that are 500 pounds. They're great people, I'm sure, but you don't get to that point without other issues, and hopefully they can find the help that they need and do whatever. And I'm not, judging or anything, but it is nice to lose that weight, because as you said, it's easier to lose the weight than to be at that weight. And for more than just the physical weight, it's like this, the size, the social stigma, the physically being able to like fit in places and do simple shit like shower.
I still struggle to every time I go to a restaurant, I still struggle to go into a booth, even though I fit every single time, but I still, every time I look at it and I think I'm not going to fit there.
Do you do the
that's
old,
like,
as you walk up to it kind of thing,
Yeah.
You kind of just hands on the hips, like the dad after he finished mowing the lawn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same thing. Basically any chair I sit in, really. Mm-hmm. I slept at my mom's the other day, and she had a bed that, obviously I slept in the bed, but even like getting into the bed, I'm like, I'm going to break this frame. And like, that's just in my head. I know that, when logic prevails, I know that I'm not, but
yeah,
like that was a reality. I've broken lots of chairs. I've broken multiple beds. Like, that's a reality of living at that weight. And that will forever be with me. I don't think that I'll ever get to a point. I could get to my goal and I could be 200 pounds. But I will 100%
I don't think
feel
that's
like
ever
I'm
going to
going to
leave
break a chair.
I don't think those thoughts are ever going to leave, because it's like,
Nope.
It's like me at my current size, or at 250. I don't feel big. I feel like I'm this scrawny ass kid with no confidence and whatever. But
I at least got the confidence part down now.
There you go. I'm in and out on that. I'll admit, openly. I definitely look like I'm confident and I speak like I'm confident, but there are moments where I think everyone has their moments where they're not 100% in belief of what they're doing, and the imposter syndrome creeps in. But to that, I wanted to segue to a kind of follow up for Bryce, and it's kind of like an application question. So this was the context that you just received. This was your new client that just walked in. Mm-hmm. Jesse at 500 pounds. We'll call this person Mo. Sure. Mo walks in, gives you this pretty elaborate description of how they feel this way. So as a PT, what do you think are some good tips for that person, Mo? To where do you, like, I think people tend to overcomplicate the fitness. They think they need to be a master of everything from the day one. So as a PT, what would be your first initial steps for that person that you think would be incredibly valuable for them to take today and move on? So, because I'm sure we're going to have some people that are watching this, hopefully they make it this far. What are some actionable steps that you would take with that person as a PT who has experience with this?
So the first thing I want to touch upon is, as a trainer, right? Because there might be trainers listening to this too. I think the biggest issue I see, and I wouldn't say that it's just with training per se, is people try to relate to things that they can't relate to.
Yeah, I
So
probably
they'll
did
be
that at some point here.
so
Yeah.
they'll be like, I totally get that. And like, unless you were 500 pounds, do you?
Yeah.
Like, again, you can understand. So
You
I
can
think,
empathize with them, yeah, but you can't.
yeah.
Yeah,
So to
fully understand.
segue that, I would just like lead with empathy, lead with compassion, and just tell them like, I understand that must have been very challenging, or that is challenging for you. Not
Yeah.
like, I totally understand. I can like, I get that, because I think within doing that, it kind of diminishes how that person's feeling, and they're already
Yeah.
in a very
Minimizes their
vulnerable.
feeling.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they're already in a very vulnerable state. So I've had other clients too who have been high 200s, right? Maybe low threes, right? And again, lots of the time, just building up the confidence to come to the gym
Mhm.
and to like send somebody a message is already way outside of their comfort zone.
Yeah,
It's
you have to
already,
remember that this person is literally asking for help
yeah.
and paying someone for it.
Yeah. So I think as a trainer, and this is before I give advice for the individual, but I think from the training standpoint, just try to be supportive. Be supportive unconditionally, and give them the support that they likely aren't even giving themselves,
Yeah.
right?
Or getting from anyone else. Yeah.
Yeah, just be there, be empathetic, be compassionate towards them, and just realize that it's taken them a lot of effort to even get there in front of you and to have that conversation and to get to that point, and make them comfortable, right? What I would do too, like I like to do this with all my clients, is find some talking points that are not related to fitness. Like
Yeah.
maybe you guys share a favorite video game. Maybe you share a favorite movie series. Maybe you share just something in common that you can find common ground on, build some rapport, and have them enjoy that session with you, or have your check-ins fun, like have
Mhm.
it be like a light in their life, not something that they're dreading. Like it shouldn't be an appointment that they're like getting stressed over. It's not a job interview. It's like
Yeah.
an hour of their day that they should be looking forward to. Or if they have a working relationship with that person, it should be a conversation that you're looking forward to having regularly. So make somebody feel comfortable, make them feel safe. But to for the training side of things now, I would say to this person, like, let's just focus on getting you doing things that are sustainable and things that you could do right now to build some confidence up, right? So I wouldn't be telling them to make any kind of like major drastic 360 flip for changes, right? We're not getting them to start walking 10,000 steps a day. We're not getting them to start tracking their foods. We're not getting them to start doing all those things. We're getting them to just start drinking more water, start eating more protein, right? Start giving them a smaller or a lower step count goal. Okay. Like,
Mhm.
hey, are you open to the idea of getting an activity tracker? Okay, you are. Awesome. Let's give you a goal of this, right? And I want you to be aware of it. Turn your notification on so it reminds you to get up and walk through the day, right? And if
Yeah.
you're not, get up, get some steps in, right? And focus on like when they get that down, they've built that confidence up. Okay, let's add to that. Let's add 500 steps, right? Let's make this something that's doable, something that's sustainable, build their confidence up. Because again, like I mentioned before, they're going to be in a very volatile state. Like, again, if they have any kind of friction and if they see that you're throwing stuff at them that they can't handle, they're likely just going to stop.
So just to kind of reiterate and confirm what you're saying here is that you think as a trainer or in this particular example, even that you think it's most important that you kind of meet them where they're at instead of try to give them a goal that is like a shredded guy's goal. You're going to meet the person where they're at and what they can currently do.
1000%. And I think that is applicable for anybody you work with, not just somebody who's exceptionally overweight, but for somebody that's coming to you in general. Your perception of where they should be is not where they should actually be. So meet them
That's
where
me
they're
hitting
at.
the Staples Business Depot button. Boom,
Yeah.
that was easy.
Just be humane and look at them and like just realize who's actually sitting in front of you and where they're
Yeah.
at, and be like, okay, this is where the coaching comes in, right? This is where
Yeah.
again we're doing our job, we're meeting them where they're at, and we're helping them build confidence and actually like move towards their goal.
Yeah, I think that's a great, first set of steps, even for the person like that might be just starting, that's really motivated by Jesse or really motivated by something I or Bryce have posted, but more than likely Jesse, because he's the big shot here.
Yeah.
So if that person is, listening and going, damn, well, what can I do today? Yeah, that's the thing. Like, meet yourself where you're at. Understand that you are not The Rock today. You are not, you know, C-Bum today. And if that is your goal, I mean, that's unrealistic maybe, but for anyone, but you know, if that's your goal, great, that's fine. But meet yourself where you're at today. Like you made a point, Bryce, that was, you're not even walking maybe 2,000 steps. What makes you so sure? And on average, you know, you're not walking 2,000 steps. You don't even have a fitness tracker, so you don't even know accurately how much you're walking, right? So to what you said is, you know, first get the fitness tracker. It may seem trivial, but if you can afford it, right? Or if not, your iPhone or whatever phone you have in your pocket can also track it. And sure, it may not be perfect, but go for walks with that in your pocket, and try to hit, you know, if you were previously doing 2,000, try to hit 2,500, but do it consistently. Does that mean every day? Sure, maybe one day you'll hit your regular 2,000, but you know, one day you'll maybe hit 3,000 or 4,000, and then as long as it over a weekly basis is quite consistently up from where it was, then you're already in the green.
Yeah,
you're already in the good.
I'd also try to tell them too, like their current reality is not permanent. Like where they are right now is not going to be a permanent thing, right? They are taking the necessary steps. They're doing the right things. So whenever somebody comes to me, like I tell them a lot, like, hey, you're doing the right stuff. Even though right now it feels like you're not doing the right things. And right now you might feel frustrated. You might feel like you're not seeing progress very fast, but like you are doing the right things. And like this current state that you're currently at, your reality right now is not where you're going to be forever. And like just try to tell them that you're going to be seeing changes as long as you're consistent and as long as you are collaborating with me on this too, right? We're collectively doing this together as a team, and that you're sticking to the whole process. Because I feel like a lot of people they'll get into it and they want to like lose weight really fast, right? But I'm like, well, it's not that easy, right? There's so much nuance to it, like we discussed earlier too. Like weight loss is not such a linear thing, unfortunately.
Which that kind of segues me to my next question to Jesse, which was, how fast did you lose weight at first, Jesse? When you started, I presume, again, you probably did a little bit more of an extreme diet at first, because in that kind of mental state, when at the first time that we're trying to lose the weight, typically as people, and I say we, forgive me, I shouldn't include myself in that, but we tend to do something like really fucking extreme off the bat. So, and not only that, but when you make a drastic change at first, it's easy. The first little bit is kind of easy for it to come off. So my curiosity is, what did that like curve of weight loss, or I guess weight loss downward, what did that curve look like for you? Was it linear? Was it like logarithmic? Was it, you know?
So, I always point out that my start was very unhealthy because I don't want people to mimic it. Mm-hmm. However, in a way, I believe
it's important to address it though.
It was very fundamental for me because I think going through that period of only eating specific foods is what allowed me to kind of get past my food addiction a little bit, and allowed me to, by the time I started incorporating those foods again, I had more control over them, and rather than them having control over me. So, when I started, for 4 months, I ate the same 3 things every single day, and I was eating 1,200 calories a day. It is completely unsustainable and a bad idea. But for me, looking back, I don't regret it. I think that it worked well for me. I'm happy that it worked, but I certainly wouldn't recommend anybody else do it.
But it taught you, like, it first of all, how long were you on that, roughly?
4 months.
Wow, that's impressive that you were sustaining it for that long. And I think you could agree, though,
I lost 100 pounds.
Okay, Jesus. But after those 4 months, and when you had that moment of like, I cannot sustain this, it taught you something. Like you were able to take the, be that opportunist that we talked about from the very first minute of this podcast, was that you're kind of an opportunist at heart, where you saw, okay, I lost this much weight, and I'm doing things this way, but maybe I can improve them. Maybe you did a little SWOT analysis and we're like, okay, strengths of this, I'm losing a shit ton of weight. Weaknesses, I fucking hate myself because I'm not eating anything cool. Opportunity for growth, probably, including more fruits, vegetables, filling myself up, threats my mental state right now, you know? So you do that quick little analysis and all of a sudden school was not a complete waste of money, and you're moving forward in a little bit of a better way. And you didn't need professional guidance for that, I don't think, at the time, Jesse, but I guess you could answer that better than I could.
That ended. So I ate that 1,200 calories right up until I started with my first trainer. And he's the one that said, you know, you can't keep doing this. We have to get in more calories. We have to get in more protein. And I knew that. I already knew those things, but I struggled with the idea. Like, I was so, for lack of a better term, I was high on the results. I was high on that number going down so dramatically, so quickly. And especially now looking back at it, man, I would love to lose 100 pounds in 4 months again. You know, so like, it's not surprising to me that it was so addictive to see the number go down so quickly. But at the same time, I had to do a bit of a reality check and recognize that what I was doing wasn't healthy, and that the whole goal of losing weight is to be healthy. So if my goal is to be healthy, I should be doing this in a healthy way. So yeah.
But I think as you look back at it now, you're saying that it was not healthy, and I think we all agree, but you're also kind of saying that it was still healthier than it was necessary. But so by saying that, it's kind of in a way admitting that it was still healthier than what was happening before that.
Of course it was. I mean, at the end of the day,
because it's relative. Healthy is also relative.
I could have straight fasted for those 4 months. It still would have been healthier. I would not recommend anybody fast for 4 months. That's ridiculous. But
yeah, we're speaking facetiously here in gross exaggerations.
I was at a point where if I kept doing that, I would have probably, there's a very real chance I'd be dead by 40. Like, I've added decades to my life, which is crazy to think about.
And more importantly, quality to those decades.
100% and 1,000%. Like, the comparison of quality of life now to then is literally the comparison of a prisoner to, you know, somebody who's a millionaire. Like, it's night and day. And I quite, you know, I just came up with that now, but I quite literally felt like a prisoner. Like, it was
in your body though.
Yeah. I'm extremely glad that I did those first 4 months because it was a necessary step for me. But again, do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah, or learn from the moments that you had to go through to learn from, right? Like, I think it's not so much of a do as I say, not as I do. Like, it's not like you're advocating for being healthy and then you're going off and smoking dope in a corner in an alleyway. Like, what's really here is like you made a mistake and you learned, and that's honestly one of the benefits of social media is that you don't have, you know, I'm going to throw myself in there. You don't have like the same level of education as me or any other dietitian or anything like that, but you do have something that none of, and I'm going to speak very boldly here, but I was in many different dietetics classrooms and most of them are white girls. Maybe they're not all white girls, but they're all fairly fit. And again, still not all of them, but a large portion. None of them that I think have the same experience of going from 500 pounds down like you do. So that's something that the people that are also in, sure, maybe they're not 500, they're 400, they're 300, they're mid 300, you know, they're a female that's low 300, you know, like they're looking at you and going, fuck, I'm, you know, who knows? They're watching one of your videos and they're like about to do what you did. And then they're listening to this now and going, oh, he did that and he said it sucked ass, but he lost 100 pounds, but he said it sucked ass. So I think it's, you know, it's how people learn. They get to see you as someone who was relatable when you put up to them in their moment. You put up that photo on the screen and they're like, holy shit, that's me right now. And I don't think you should minimize that is kind of what I'm getting at here is I don't think you should minimize that. I think that's incredibly valuable. And that's not the only value that you bring. You entertain people. You're hilarious, of course. And I've said that to you many times in conversation. It's not just me saying this for the public. Jesse's a really funny guy and he's a very nice guy. But I think it's also just really important to not minimize and maximize the idea that you blaze the trail for everyone else that gets to start and watch you and learn from you and learn from Bryce through you. Because, you know, Bryce is teaching you how to do XYZ thing, or he's showing you how there are trainers that are supportive. There are trainers that are not the trainer that they went to for the first time and they made them feel like shit, you know, because they went to someone that looked like Joey Swole but didn't have the niceness of Joey Swole, you know? So it's all of that, I think, is a very good learning opportunity when you think about it that way. But I think we often don't frame ourselves in that light. And maybe, you know, even I think, you know, looking at it, I think even in the situation like Bryce, it's unfair for him that he doesn't have maybe the social clout that you do, for reasons that I think are very clear for all of us. But, you know, just being in those posts where he can show off, and being in this podcast right now where he can show off he is a trainer, that he is empathetic to people, that he has experience in this, and that is not like, if somebody has a bad experience in the gym or with a trainer, they're not all like that. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So I think that's an incredible value. That's not really anything we discussed in terms of education, not really anything we discussed in terms of, you know, nuance or anything like that. But I think it's very important to see that value that we bring, even to just the 60-second video that somebody might have seen for the first time.
We're not all cut from the same cloth, you know? I think that's like the important thing to think about here.
Yeah.
100%.
And to another point, I think Michael Jordan was the one that was like coined for saying this, is that, you know, that kid that's sitting in the front row of the Staples Center, Staples Arena, or whatever arena, United Center at the time, they are watching you now, or in this case, the person behind the phone, they're watching you now, but you don't know if that's their first time ever watching you or if they're season's ticket holders. So you better perform, because if that's their first time watching you, you don't want them to leave disappointed. And if they're a season's ticket holder, you still don't want them to leave disappointed, because you never know. And so same kind of idea there. I think that, you know, you never know who's going to watch you, but I think you guys do a great job of exhibiting who you are and what you're about. And people can find an immense amount of value through both of your social channels. So I think that's like, you guys do a great job of embodying that, right? And that comes with being unapologetically yourself, right?
I think Jesse and I have spoke of it too, like in many other podcasts as well. And I think the biggest reason we do this is, even if one person could listen to this, one person that's struggling, right? If they could listen to this and it could help them through whatever they're going through, then that's a win. It's worth doing, right? If someone could be at the point where they're like, I want to give up, and they could like listen to the podcast, or listen to like a snippet, like a reel, a clip for Instagram, whatever it is, and they could be like, you know what, I'm gonna give it one more day.
Yeah.
Then like it's worth.
I think that's, and I think that's like when it's a dark day or whatever, like especially for us Canadians, there's a lot of them because we're not really paid for our views. Shout out Instagram and TikTok. But I think it's really important to remember that not stroke your ego a little bit, but yeah, to remember that there is that one kid watching for the first time that weighs in a tremendous amount, or the opposite, that weighs nothing at all and is really struggling to put on weight. But to know that there is someone potentially out there that could be supportive to them, or that could bring them some value and get them to their goal a little bit faster than they can on their own.
We're at like an hour and a half. We should probably wrap this up.
Yeah. Yeah, we definitely should. I do have to go edit my daily vlog. If you guys don't, I'm going to plug my YouTube right now. If you don't follow me on YouTube already, I'm daily vlogging for all of December, and we'll see what happens after that. But go check that out at Evidence Nutrition on Instagram and TikTok. Thank you guys so much for having me.
This is a pleasure.
And for stimulating conversation. Hopefully we can do this again sometimes if people give a damn, or if people want to cancel me because I drank a soda on the Potter, then I guess I'll just, I don't know, go step on a Lego piece barefoot. I don't know.
I wouldn't wish that upon anybody.
Yeah, dude, worst enemy. anyways, thank you guys so much, and see you next time, maybe? Question mark.
Yes, we would love that.
Yeah.
Thanks again. I think there's a lot of great takeaways within this episode. So
that's the hope.